Well, we're live. I don't think anybody's here. Uh, Dan England. Hi, Dan. And I think we'll have some other. I'm sure we're gonna have some people. Oh yeah, I should put it into our little group here on the back end. Let's put it here. Um, let's see. And I also wanted to. Oh, I should tell Michael. Um, and then we'll get going soon. Anyway, how's everybody doing? If you have, I see Dan, I see Jeremy. If you have, and I see Indiana Orthopedic Institute. So if anybody has questions, you could type them in there at any time and we'll get to them. And when we can. Hi, Michael.
Dennis, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's a good question. I'm adjusting everything now. And I have the sun is coming in on my head. So it's kind of like,
It's all good.
it looks like
Oh,
part of
good.
my head is missing.
It's
I
all
think
good.
something was missing actually. And also my office is also the one of the spare bedrooms
Yeah.
and which is also like a catch-all and so on other things like Zoom or Google Meet, you can blur the background or put in extra backgrounds. But today we're on natural.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And how are you? What's going on in your world?
Uh, just took the kids to school, signed some bank documents, and now hopping on the podcast with you. It's all good.
20 years ago I had a mentor and he was very good entrepreneur. He he was a a builder. He built buildings and apartment buildings and like he owned like half of the town in Colorado where I live. But he used to talk about he's like, we do for people that don't understand like entrepreneurial life. There we were mostly conditioned to like get a job, sit in a cubicle, do your job, drive to work, sit in traffic, all that stuff. But sometimes it's like we do entrepreneurial things. And sometimes it's like you're signing bank documents, that's work, or you're like
Yeah. Yeah.
running errands, you're
Yeah.
dealing with a legal issue, you're doing all these things, and these are all entrepreneurial things.
Yeah. So
Things.
some of them can be quite heavy, as you know, at times, but then some of them are mundane, but it's all part of the journey. Super
Yeah,
fun.
it is all part of the journey. And so this is awesome. Uh we work together, but we've also kind of becoming friends, which could be dangerous in business, but it's nice.
Yeah.
Um, but what we wanted to talk about, so we're for those that haven't been on Substack Lives, it's just a great way to put a face on a profile picture and a bunch of newsletter
Yeah.
articles that are going out there. And Michael is a very accomplished surgeon, and we wanted to introduce Michael to the Substack world and anywhere else because these will be sitting in other applications. So we're using these videos to introduce Michael and to use them to further introduce Michael. So introduce yourself. Like, tell us your background. What got you here? Why are you here right now talking with Dennis? And all
Yeah,
this.
thanks, Dennis. No, that's awesome. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, but the journey started off a little bit different than that. I was growing up in a small town in Indiana, in the middle of the country, was my original background, and I just thought I wanted to be a small town physician. That's early on in my career. Obviously, that did not come to fruition, and just like everybody's journey, when you start out young, you have an idea of what your life looks like, and that never, in my experience, yeah, you know it as well as anybody. The journey is not exactly what you expected. So I had a very pivotal moment with my parents when I said I wanted to go to med school, and they had a very, I thought, really insightful response. what happens if you don't get into med school, or you don't like the sight of blood, or you, right? What are you going to do with a degree that you're basically, they said, you're going to go get a degree that you can go get a job afterwards and earn money because you're off our payroll, which was actually interesting. And they said, you're good at math and science. Why don't you think about engineering? So ironically, I went and got an engineering degree, but fell in love with engineering, ironically. So, and then for a period of time in engineering, I thought, oh, I just want to be an engineer. But then I looked at it about halfway through school, and I was doing a co-op job during school, and I realized I didn't want to sit. A lot of engineers, not all, but a lot, have to sit at cubicles if you're going to be the kind that's working on CAD, or you're doing. I was mechanical and civil engineering minded, so I was going to do a lot of that sort of work. And I'm like, nah, I like being around people. So I ultimately decided to go to med school. So, as you've highlighted nicely, as we've worked together, uh, combining engineering and medicine was a gift that I didn't really see coming. But then I went to med school, went to orthopedic residency in Chicago, and then did my fellowship in hip and knee replacement at Mayo Clinic. And since I've done that, it's been a wild journey of healthcare. And I graduated from Mayo Clinic in 2005. And over the last 20 years of my practice, it's been a wild ride, because I think I represent what many physicians who are my age do. Is it's just been healthcare has changed so dramatically in the past 2 decades. You have to adapt. And so there's been two, I think, fundamental principles. Number one, I did combine engineering and medicine for the first probably decade of my career. I did a lot of implant design for hip and knee replacement. So I'm specifically a hip and knee replacement surgeon. I tell my patients, I don't do anything that's not about either hip and knee replacement, either teaching, learning, doing research, or actually performing the surgery. And I teach it. I have fellows who've graduated residency. So I'm a practicing hip and knee replacement surgeon 3 days a week. And then I was employed by the largest medical school in the United States, which is Indiana University. And so when you're part of such a large organization, the bureaucracy is pretty thick, and you sort of understand what that world is. And I was thinking this morning before we did this, Dennis, what sort of transformational thought process put me into this path. And I tell you, it took me until about 7 or 8 years ago to realize that I'm not a large corporation person. So, ironically, I was stuck in it for a long time, because I don't think it's sad. Maybe it's sad that it took me that long to figure it out. But about 7, 8 years ago, I realized that I really like being with growth companies. So I work with I design implants with a company called Innovus, used to be Don Joy. And they're an innovative growth company. That when I first joined them 10 years ago as a consultant, they were in the hundreds of millions of sales in terms of their worth, and now they're over a billion. And that ride over 10 years, taking a small company who most people didn't even know their name, to the number 5 orthopedic company in the world, that's been a great journey. And I realized that that's not for everybody. There's risk inherent in that. Sometimes you're like, is this company going to end up being like going to oblivion or get bought by somebody else? Is this going to disappear? But you just keep, there's some excitement with that as well. So it's like this, could it fail? Every day there's no guarantee. It's not like Indiana University is so big, it can't fail. So largest med school in the United States, it's going to keep being there. But at the same token, that adrenaline that you get, that sort of excitement you get every day when you get up, is missing. So that led me to break away from there 3 years ago, and start the Indiana Orthopedic Institute, which was just myself and Dave Conrad, my anesthesiologist and good friend. And now it's got 14 surgeons, 14 surgeons and 85 employees in just 3 years. And so I've realized that's where my passion lies, in being with growth companies. So it's interesting, that evolution, because I didn't start there. I was in large. I mean, Mayo Clinic is probably one of the largest health systems in the world, and then Indiana University, large. So it took me a little bit to understand where my passion lies and where my strength lies. And I feel blessed that I've been able to get here. So that's the journey. That's myself in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's a 2-minute story of a 2-minute version of a much longer story. And
Yeah.
something that I love getting these messages across to people. Katie said, "Hi, everybody. Don't have long to stay, but I can't resist the Substack Live. Hi, how are you?" Um, but I love, when you at the whole end of that thing, you said a couple times your passion. And even yesterday, your post with Steve Jobs was about passion. And that speech by Steve Jobs, which wasn't a speech, he was being interviewed like on Oprah or something like
Yeah.
uh 40 years, 30 years
Yeah.
ago or something. Hi, John. But what he talked about, and I memorized that speech. It was like, people say you need to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. And this is Steve Jobs talking.
Yeah.
And it's true. And the reason is because it's so hard. Being entrepreneurial, starting a business, or even any long-term career path, it's so hard. People think in the beginning of your intro there, we said it's like people think it's like you get out of college or school or whatever you're doing, and then you start climbing and you reach success, and they think it's a straight line, but it's more like spaghetti. Is like the way I view.
Oh, totally, totally
Yeah.
agree. My first job, my first practice, I mean, talk about getting caught in the healthcare mess. My first job, I went into private practice, and it was the largest, hip and knee group in the state of Indiana, very well recognized, but it had a very antiquated business model. And so I didn't know that at the time. When I left Mayo Clinic, and Mayo is an amazing place to train. It's if there's a if there's an ideal healthcare model in the world, it's there. Uh, but they don't teach you. It's so academic. They didn't teach me anything about business. So this is an embarrassing story that I tell sometimes, and I tell it to my younger fellows to try and teach them not to be this way. My first board meeting in my private group that ultimately failed, I didn't even know what the word accounts receivable was. I was 32 years old, Dennis, and used to say that to my stepfather who was in finance, and he was like, "Well, that's not your fault. You've been buried in textbooks trying to be an orthopedic surgeon the best you could be. That's what you're supposed to do." I'm like, "But that's embarrassing. I don't even know what that term means, and I'm 32 years old." So that was 21 years ago. Let's just say I've had to go at warp speed to change all that. Um, but that was such an interesting thing. And then 2 years later, because I didn't know anything, I had 100-mile non-compete, and I needed to leave that group, and they held me to the non-compete, which pushed me out of the state. So I took my wife and 2 young kids and moved them to Connecticut, where I worked for the University of Connecticut and took that job. And I arrived there with less than $1,000 to my name, 2 children who were confused why they were leaving their home at age 1 and 3, and an ex-wife who was upset that she was leaving her practice. Understandably, she was a physician as well. And that was right when you talk about the journey and you reach an all-time low and you're coming in on fumes with less than $1,000 and you got to buy a house, and it's 2007 in the state of Connecticut on the East Coast, which doesn't have a low cost of living. It's terrifying. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying. And you're 35 years old and you're like, I graduated from Mayo Clinic. I'm a physician. I have a skill set, and this is where I'm at. How did this happen? Well, and so I spend a lot of time teaching young orthopedic surgeons and anyone who will listen to it's not just good enough now a to be an orthopedic surgeon and have a knowledge of healthcare or medicine. You have to understand the economics of healthcare. And I will tell you that those moments when you get that low, Dennis, to your point, I mean, to bring it back around, if you don't have passion for what you're doing, those are the moments you want to give up, right? Those are the moments you're like, what? Why don't I just go do something else? This is too hard. I don't want to keep, but I love being, I mean, my happiest place, you've heard me say this, my happiest place is being in the operating room doing a hip or knee replacement. It's like either there or with my family. Those are my 2 happiest places in the world. And so if you have that passion, to your point, and Steve Jobs did, if you're lucky to find that passion, then you can weather those deep, deep valleys that I don't think there's anyone that doesn't encounter those valleys, but you got to be able to get through them. And I think
You do.
passion is something that helps you get there, to your point. I mean, I
It
assume
does.
you've had the same experience, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I went through some tough times also, with addiction and everything. And this was almost 23 years. I'm creeping up on of sobriety,
Congratulations. That's
and
fantastic.
yeah, and part of that is like, realizing early on in that, and I want to flip this back to you in a second because I want this to be about you. But But early on in sobriety, like, the first thing I had to learn, and it was really interesting, and a couple of people are saying, "Hi, um, Florence, I understand I'm a CRNA. Florence, life is not linear." That's
Yeah.
true. Um, but the first thing I learned about I when I was 31, when you were learning about AR, and I did learn about that earlier in college,
Yeah,
uh,
thank goodness.
but,
It's embarrassing.
yeah, but the first thing I had to learn about sobriety is that drinking is not the problem. The problem was my thinking and being non-adjusted to life. Like, I had to learn how to
Yeah,
live and how to get through tough times, which leads me the reason I'm even talking about this right now is because we were like yesterday or a couple days ago, we're like, "What should we talk about?" on our little LinkedIn
yeah,
or, Substack Live. We
yeah,
came up with grit. And, it's really hard, and most people fail in sobriety, or addiction recovery or whatever it is you're struggling with, um, because it's really hard, and you get to what happens is the drugs, the alcohol, the food, the porn, the Netflix, the doom scrolling, all these things are distractions from living. And it's
yeah,
because we don't know how to do something, we develop habits that keep us distracted, and we end up, like, laying on the couch or working on some menial job that means nothing towards our dreams, and then we suffer, and then we start eating or doing things to distract ourselves from our unhappy lives. And the
yep,
solution is you have to, like push through. There's a
yeah,
time when you have to just be like, "Wow, this is really hard. I don't understand this." And most people stop there. I don't
yeah,
understand it. And you have to push through. And luckily, like, I wanna say it's luck. Some of it's luck, I think, but you were fortunate
mhm.
enough to find your passion early on.
Yeah, that's
Not
right, that's right,
not everybody
that's right.
does. I didn't either early on. So
Yeah,
that goes back to the spaghetti. It's like, life it's not linear. You keep trying things, but most people quit it like, "Oh, my life sucks. It's not going the way I want, and now I'm, like, depressed. I'm gonna get
yeah,
drunk or something." But, um, so I think you were fortunate to find your passion. However,
agreed.
that's not enough. You still need the
All
grit.
agreed.
When you have to move, you have a non-compete, you can't open your own business, you wanna do what you wanna do. Now what do I do? Like, you coulda quit there, but instead you're like, "Alright, this is what we have to do now in order to get where we wanna go later." And that's grit, and I think that's
Yeah,
a
you're right, and, it's funny, the first time I saw Angela Duckworth and I saw her TED Talk, it was online, I don't even remember how I came across it or if someone showed it to me, but it was really insightful because Angela Duckworth's, body of work was about really understanding. Because I think she started that was probably 10, 15 years ago when I came across and she describes grit, ironically, it's gonna dovetail back as passion and perseverance, the 2 things, and so her whole study was, do if you go to an Ivy League school or you're a great test taker or you score out, you have a high IQ, is that what makes people successful? And she I remember reading her book, it's been a while, but she studied West Point graduates and she studied a number of populations. And the irony was, it wasn't about test taking. It wasn't about where they went to school. It was the ability to get, when they got knocked down, they got right back up and they kept going just as hard because they were passionate about where they were going. It dovetailed. I mean, a lot of it's consistent themes, right? Steve Jobs I'm sure was no different when he talks about passion. He had to have grit to get to take Apple to where it went, right? You knew he got knocked down multiple times and found a way to get back up and keep going. And that's the secret. I really believe that's the secret sauce is getting that. If you're fortunate enough to find your passion, and I think that occurs in various evolutions. My passion now is different than my passion when I was 25. I also think as we age and evolve and our brain and our personality evolves and our life evolves, you probably have different passions along the way. But I think
Yeah.
grit is the consistent thing that you learn and I believe you learn it at a young age. I do believe that. I think you can get it. I think you can acquire it later. It's probably not as easy if it's not hardwired in you. It's probably harder to get it later on in life, but I do believe you can learn to acquire it. But it's definitely a state of mind. And her work, I think, was transformative when I first saw her talk about it. Just the concept of grit was impressive to me, and then her body of work to supporting it. But I agree with you. Grit's critical.
Yeah, and John says you have to fall love this, yeah, you have to fall in love with feedback about what doesn't work in any and all feedback loops.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. 'Cause you can bang your head up against the wall forever. I mean, you can be passionate about something and you can have all the grit in the world, but you're right, the feedback loop's important. You have to have an awareness to know I'm heading in a direction. Wait a minute, this direction, this direction isn't working. My it's funny, my wife and I talk about this a lot and related to, I have 6 children, and so you see all these different personalities genetically that are similar, but yet they're very different. And she says to me, and this will go right to John's point, she says to me frequently, "You don't seem to have a problem pivoting quickly." She goes, but she is she was a chemist. Now she's a mom because we have a lot of kids, but she's very linear. She's great with spreadsheets. She's great with spreadsheets. In fact, she runs our family. It's one of the gifts that I'm blessed with is a wife and mother who's very organized, but she'll run things on spreadsheets, but she is a little bit more linear and it's very hard for her. She'll acknowledge this to pivot quickly. She'll stay stuck on something for a while. So I think John's point is appropriate that if you can get the feedback loop fast enough and say, wait a minute, this isn't working, but there's other path over here that will. Let's run down that path. And I find that ironically, one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing right now, which is very frustrating, is negotiating with healthcare systems, trying to do deals with various hospitals and whatnot. And man, they not only is healthcare changing so fast under our feet, their 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 approach to healthcare and their reactivity to the changing regulatory environment. CMS may say, okay, we're going to increase professional fees, we're going to decrease facility fees, whatever. They're so reactionary to it when it can be in the middle of negotiations that they change their course. And so you have to be able to John's point, you have to have that feedback loop to say, wait a minute, that's what I was doing earlier. What the way I was speaking to them earlier is not resonating anymore. They've already started speaking a different language because the healthcare landscape is changing so fast. You got to be able to move with it. It's a wild, and the next couple of years are going to be crazy in that regard because just healthcare in general. But those are great points.
Yes,
Really great
and,
points.
it's great to see. I think some of what you're talking about comes with maturity and experience. I think knowing that, like, okay, wow, this isn't like picking up on those signals to be able to say this isn't working. I don't think everybody has that ability, at least early on in your career, to realize that. I've made mistakes for years and now I catch them quicker. I'm like, okay, I can see where things aren't going well or people are responding a certain way that I need to pivot. And,
Yeah.
but I've made painful mistakes
Well, I
financially.
think you do. I think you always will. Right. I mean, I think that you got to learn from them. You will. You're going to pivot quick and you're going to have confidence to run down that next path. But ironically, you're going to make wrong decisions as long as they're not catastrophic decisions. And I think that's okay too. I mean, I think that's another thing about grit that's important. It's okay to fail. In fact, you will fail. And failure doesn't mean you get demoralized by it. It doesn't mean that you give up. It just means that you made a miscalculation and you learn from it. I mean, that's, I think, the biggest, that's no different than all aspects of life. We all will fail and we continue to fail. And I think, some of the most frustrating people to deal with, quite frankly, are those that lack humility and don't have an awareness that they actually fail at anything. But we all are going to fail. Every single one of us, right? Even if we
Yeah.
want to admit it or not, multiple times. I have failures ahead. I'm sure I have failures ahead. I don't know what they are yet, but I'm sure they're coming. Just it's the nature of living.
It is, and I think the word itself, it's almost better to use a different word than failure. I think
Yeah,
I think it's like looking at it from a different angle. The word itself gets such a negative connotation, and
yeah,
it could be painful. Don't get me wrong. Like I've had, and I'm sure everybody who's successful on here has had failure, but I look at it as it's not the end of anything. It's the beginning of something new.
yeah.
Right? It's like, all right, I set out on this path and I was learning these things along the way. I learned what I needed to learn and now it's not working anymore. So now I have to pivot. And then we call that failure and people get stuck
Mm,
there. But it's
yeah.
actually if you change it from failure to feedback, "Oh, this isn't working. I have to pivot and do something different now." So I think it's our perception of that word failure is what determines our next experience.
Yeah,
And what do you
I
think about
agree. Yeah, I think it maybe it's like a miscalculation. We've been talking a lot about teams recently and leading teams, and the post yesterday talked about different languages and how people respond, right? And you can make mistakes all day, every day there, right? Managing people, I think, is probably one of the hardest things that I do on a daily basis. Like I said, doing surgery is my happy place because quite frankly, I'm just working on uh, the psychomotor skills and craft that I have, which I love, but I'm not. I mean, I'm interacting with the team, but we're so refined that I usually don't have. There's not as much interaction. There's more execution, which is fun to do. Um, but I think we've been talking about the teams that you lead and the individuals in the team, what motivates them, what makes them feel valued, and makes them, uh, push hard in the direction that the entire company or organization is going. I think you make miscalculations all the time there. You think people, all they want is a raise, right? That's the classic one. Oh, they're unhappy at work. How do I get my team motivated? Let's just pay them more. Ironically, I think that, and that's, there's large institutions that are like, oh, we're having a culture problem. Give everybody a little raise. That is not what motivates most people. Some maybe, but I'd say, we talked about like there's words of affirmation. Some people just like to say, every few weeks, hey, you're doing a great job. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much. What did that take? 3 seconds. And
that?
it might have been more that it might have been that might have been more valuable and resonated with that team member, more than anything else you could have done. And I think that's hard as you grow and get a large organization, getting your leaders of the next level to understand that and lead their teams accordingly. That's a challenge, right? Passing that down. But there's failures in that all the time, right? I think someone's motivated by X, Y, or Z, and because maybe that's what I'm motivated by. I'm subjecting my own bias on there, and then I realize they don't. That's not resonating with them at all. That took me a long time to figure out. I did not
And that
realize that.
comes from the love languages or the
Yeah,
love languages for business, or I forget the name of that book where they rewrote it for business also.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's exactly.
Yeah.
Gary Chapman was the author. Yeah, same thing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, same thing. So it's like if you were like, well, if we go to the love languages, it's like, I'm a touch guy. I like being like touched.
yep,
It gives me that warm feeling. And none of
yep,
these love languages are good or bad. They just are. And it's like
right,
recognizing who you're talking to and speak their language. And like in a romantic relationship, if I like touch and she doesn't, and I try to touch her all the time to make her feel love, but she
right.
prefers
I
that I
totally
back.
agree.
Yeah, so right, if she prefers that I vacuum the
Right.
floor, then that that gives her security. So when I'm touching her and kissing her all the time and she's like, she's that's nice,
It's
but
not
it
she's not
doesn't.
receiving it. She's not yeah, I totally get it. I totally
Yeah,
get
it's like I'm speaking
it.
Chinese, she speaks Japanese, and we're missing, and that can go on for 20 years, and that causes
Amen.
all kinds of problems. And in leadership, like, people will stay in a job with a great culture and a great leader for less money
All
than
day, every day.
all
Absolutely right.
day, every day, and, like,
That's absolutely right.
yeah, and instead of giving a raise, like, go up and be like, "So how do you think things are going here?" Like, if you ask one of your employees, like, "How are you?" Like, "Tell me about what's going on in your life," or, "How are you, like, what can I do to improve your job here?" Like,
Yeah,
and most of the times, it's probably not anything, but the fact that you asked and care
yeah.
is worth more than money.
I would agree, Dennis. I've heard a lot recently. I've heard a lot recently. You and I speak about this in this new era that we're in with AI and whatnot. I've heard a lot recently about authenticity and being genuine. And I think one of the things I've heard recently about the large institution I was with a long time ago is that they have all these mid-level people walking around sort of asking that question, "How are you doing? We're here to support you." But then there's nothing behind it,
Right,
right? So they've taken what you've said, they understand it, but the but I think the miscalculation is that they don't think that the people they're asking it of, the workers, the frontline, for us, it's healthcare providers, it's people caring for patients. which can be a challenging and stressful environment. If you ask them falsely, "Hey, how are you doing? We're here to support you," and then you walk away, or you're not genuine. I mean, these people, these providers on the front line, they can read through that in 2 seconds, right? They're caring for patients with significant illnesses or debilitating diseases. And if you're going to be inauthentic with them, it's not going to work very well. And I think that we see that, I think, a lot right now. And I do think in a world of AI and I would say large corporate consolidation where companies are getting massive, this is going to be something that I bet will be secret sauce for growth companies, is maintaining a culture of authenticity, and a genuine interest in the employees and the team and how they're doing. I think that'll be a differentiator. I
And
do.
in every industry, I think, yes, of course, like, the keeping the humanness in the healthcare is what people need. I mean, because it's about human health is what you're
Yes.
talking about, but in every industry, I think, keeping humanness, whether it's, like, writing content or
Yeah.
dealing with patients or any type of business right now, because everything is so microwaved, AI, automated, everything. If we can keep humanness
Yeah.
in in the business as we grow, that's the biggest thing. It's like it starts out human, and then as you scale and grow and think more about
Yeah.
money and growth, keeping investors happy, we lose some of the humanness, and then we lose some of the quality of the company that
I
got us.
agree.
So
I agree.
keeping the humanness is going to be the future of every business, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That takes a lot of focus and discipline. I yap about focus and discipline. I preach about it all the time. They probably get sick and tired of me. With with the Novus who I work with, we talk about, as we're working on, when you're designing an implant, you're designing a hip or knee replacement, and you get 50 surgeons to input. And I've seen this on design teams over my career because I originally worked with a larger company, Stryker, years ago. And that's where I cut my teeth working on these surgeon design teams. So it's a combination of engineers and surgeons working together. And what happens is, as you get bigger, it's harder to maintain the focus and discipline to stay on track. And the same thing you're mentioning, as companies grow, you're like, oh, when we were only 6 employees 3 years ago, I could pay much more attention and have more authentic interactions with those 6 people than I could now with, creeping up towards 100. That's a totally different thing. So I think this is where I think systems and processes that are authentic, putting those into the corporation and into the whatever business you're running, but they have to be authentic processes. So you have to make sure that those things are passed down through every layer of the organization if you can, as you scale and grow. And it's not easy, right? I mean, you see, it's very hard. I think that's one of the hardest things that I see in growth companies, including our own, is maintaining that intimate culture because you're successful. It's almost a byproduct of your own success, is it gets harder and harder to maintain that culture. It's a good thing, but it's hard to do. I think to Steve Jobs' credit, I think one of the things he did more masterfully than most is maintain that for a longer period of time as it got bigger and bigger. Probably because of what a great leader he was, in his own way.
Yeah, and that was also a different product too. I think that you're dealing with humans. You're dealing with
Yeah.
humans for
Yeah, yeah.
your staff and as your clients.
Yeah,
It's
well,
different.
they're humans that are in a very, healthcare is such an interesting, if you want to call it a business, it's an interesting business, but your customers, the end customer, because some customers are the payers or the commercial insurance companies or the hospitals, whatever. But the true customer is the patient, and the patient is in a very vulnerable and stressed state. So there's not a whole lot of businesses necessarily. There are others, but where your customer is not in a good place almost 100% of the time. Because if you're in your office, there's something typically wrong, right? I mean, so it's an interesting twist on customer service. And I would say it's even more that way. One of the things that this has been years ago, one of the things that it still does frustrate me about healthcare is if I go, my brother worked for Eli Lilly, a large pharmaceutical company. And this was early on in my evolution, probably 15, 20 years ago. And he said, "Oh, you got to look at Ritz-Carlton or Disney because they're like worldwide experts and leaders on customer service." And I didn't really know what that meant. So I finally had enough money uh, not that long ago, actually, to go to a Ritz-Carlton for the first time. It's where I asked my wife to marry me. And I went there and I'd never seen customer service like it before. I was like, they knew my name. They knew what our plans were, where I was going to propose, and there was changes. And I was like, what is this? And then I realized why they were known for customer service. And then I started thinking, why can't we do this in healthcare? Like if the Ritz Carlton or Disney's the kid version of that sort of customer service that's been known, why when you check into a hospital or an office do you have to tell them what your allergies are 8 times? But like that's ridiculous. Like here it is, your healthcare is so important, and the system that we've created is provides some of the lowest level of customer service. And that's been one of the things we've been trying to do is we built the Indiana Orthopedic Institute, and we did it back when we did the hip and knee center for Indiana University, is make customer service a key aspect of it, because these patients are vulnerable, they're scared, they're stressed, and so are their families are undergoing a big surgical procedure, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not easy. I mean, it frustrates. I mean, as a patient, when I go in to get something done and they're like, "What's your allergies?" I don't have any allergies. And then you're literally 10 minutes later, "Do you have any allergies?" "No, I don't have any allergies." All right. It's like, why can't I not tell you once? Put it in your system and don't ask me again. Right. Like this is ridiculous. But somehow we have a hard time uh doing that. But I think though we can learn lessons from those other organizations that are so good at it. We just need to bring it into our own organization.
Yeah, and those are details, and I want people to understand it. It's like, if you have a business, whatever business you're in, especially now, because they all already exist, like, there's nothing new
Yeah.
under the sun.
Yeah. Right.
So, every business you're in, there's, like, I think about 27,000 orthopedic surgeons in the United States, is that correct?
It's about right. Yeah. It's about right.
Around 30,000. They all do orthopedic surgery. So
Yeah.
the difference is the details. So the difference in the success, because they all do orthopedic surgery, and some are really good, and some are hacks, and some are kind of good, and everything in
There
between.
everybody's human, right? I always tell people, humanity is on a bell-shaped curve, right? So, right, I mean, everybody knows about a normal distribution, or if they don't, it's basically people are clustered around the mean, and then outside you get greater standard deviations, outside and humans are all on it, no matter what it is. I'm gonna get on a plane later today and go to an orthopedic course, and I'm gonna pray that the pilots is flying my wife and my kids to this orthopedic meeting are on the top part of the distribution. But I know that I'm sure I've been on planes where there's some of the bottom half of the distribution. And the physicians and surgeons are no different. They just happen to have gone through a process, and pilots do too, where the probably some of the bottom portions have been weeded out. But then when you get up there, though, there's still a normal distribution of levels of expertise. You're exactly right, Dennis. So
Yeah.
there are.
Yeah, and I think
That's
it's
clear.
important. Like, one of the things that I'm, because we've been working together for, I think, only about 6 weeks or so, but it's like, I do notice the passion in you, and I do notice that I don't like using words right or wrong, but you have the right motivation for business. It's like you are customer focused, client, patient focused, and not everybody is. A lot of people are money focused, and
Yeah, true.
well, you get those outcomes. You get different outcomes, and it also that vision pulling you when you have the right perspective and the right focus, which should be patient focus for everybody,
Yeah.
then that's why you're successful. And I think it's doing that over for a long period of time where you build that larger success because people pick up on that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, you know, there's a lot of distractions in healthcare just because of how stressful it is and how rapidly it's changing. But one of the things I say all the time, and sometimes surgeons can have a reputation for being intense and abrupt, and it's just it sort of filters. It's sort of a self selection bias because surgery is such an intense environment that you get personalities that are, I would say, high octane and sometimes a little bit volatile. But that's just because it's such a stressful environment. I'm sure it's no different than personalities that end up in other professions, sort of selection bias. But one of the things I always talk about, if we start getting intense, or even if I'm getting upset with staff, one of the things I always fall back on is like, listen, I'm frustrated because we're not performing at the highest level, but I need everyone in the room to think that this patient on the table is their family member. It's their mother or father or brother or sister. And if you do that, you'll understand why I'm being so passionate, why I'm frustrated, and why my delivery is a little bit accelerated than most. And nowadays you have to just take a time to explain that. And that's one of the things that I immediately go to. And I've found that neutralizes it, it neutralizes some of the anxiety. And then they can understand your delivery a little bit better when you say, if this was your mother, would this performance be acceptable? And all of a sudden because then it becomes not about their individual wants and needs, even though that's the way humans work, right? And humans are like, well, I'm not being treated well today. I don't want to go do this. I don't want to do this. Hey, this is your mom on the table. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I don't need my lunch break now. Oh, wait, I don't have to worry. Right? That when you turn selfish to selfless, the the paradigm changes, behaviors change, and the team operates in a totally different way. And I think that's powerful. I mean, I think that's one of the most powerful things is to make the job about helping someone else and who's vulnerable, like we've talked about patients are, and pretend it's your own family member. If you go back to that, um, you'll be successful. And in healthcare, it's interesting because in orthopedic surgery, because until recently, there was a lot of money in orthopedic surgery. So you did get a lot of people who they got into it for the right reasons. Probably we all take an oath when we graduate med school. It used to be called the Hippocratic Oath. Now it's called the physician's oath. But you take an oath. A lot of the things are first do no harm, always put the patient first, whatever. But life creeps in, and we see some physicians that become consumed by money, or they get consumed by ego, or what have you. And I think, to your point, um, our business has always been, and it takes constant focus and discipline. Constant. It's about the patient. Everything is about the patient. But it's easy to think about signing bank documents, or holy cow, this is a beautiful building we just built. The rent is really high. We got to make sure that's covered in the overhead. There's that piece of it. But at the end of the day, I think we all have to say, we're only going to make so much money doing this. So let's make sure the patient is front and center. And it seems to work really well. So I'm glad, Dennis, you picked up on that, because that's something that we in our organization that we aspire to make it about the patient. That's what it should be. It's what we all went into healthcare for.
It should be, and I think any business is similar where, like, you get into it for the right reasons, and then, like, if you talk about entrepreneurship, you get into what it usually is because you're good at something or you're passionate about something, and then as you grow, it turns into, like, you only do what your skill or expertise is, like, what, 30% of the time, 70% of the time, you're
Yeah.
doing entrepreneurial things, like, you're managing a team, you're dealing with accounting or
Yeah.
clerical work, admin work,
Yeah.
or whatever it is,
Yeah.
meetings, trainings, all those things. You're only doing surgery, what,
Yeah. Oh,
20%
yeah.
of the
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. No, you're right, Dennis. Yeah, truly, I'm only doing surgery 2 days a week. I do surgeries on Mondays and Tuesdays, and Wednesdays is a clinic where I'll see like 50 or 60 patients. And then Thursday and Friday, like today, this is administrative days and travel days to go to meetings and whatnot. But you're right. I mean, it's amazing you spend your whole life going to do a skill, a craft, what you're good at. And then it turns out it's not the largest percentage of your day. Maybe your happiest part of your day, but it's not the largest percentage. You're
No,
exactly
and if
right.
you don't know that, and if you don't understand that, and you don't, like, there's a difference between doing your skill and your craft and then running a business. They're two different things. And people don't understand that, which is why, like, I have a job, like, I can help people on the business side. I can't help you do surgery or design new knee or
Yep.
hip implants,
Yep.
but I
Yep.
can help on other, to help it make other sides of the business more efficient. And I think that understanding that from any business owner, whether you're doing orthopedic surgery or selling, hammers and nails,
That's
like,
right.
same thing.
That's exactly right. Could not agree more. In fact, I think that's where a good, I'm given one of my favorite talks that I give. I've given it probably the last 5 or 6 years at this meeting I'm going to today. It's a fellows meeting. So, for the people on that, healthcare may be a little different. You go through medical school, then you go through residency, and then when you're done with residency, you do a fellowship if you want to specialize. Well, these are all fellows for hip and knee replacement, and that's all the courses. And they asked me to give a talk a number of years ago on how to be more efficient in life. And what's interesting is I was just talking with my wife about it this morning when we dropped off the kids at school. Efficiency, first of all, efficiency is not moving faster. And when you talk about it in surgery, young surgeons believe that it's like operating faster. It's not. It's removing the wasted movements. And in surgery is no different than life. If you're going to be efficient in life, you got to remove the waste. And to your point, so many people, if all the things you mentioned earlier in the cast when we started talking about scrolling, mindless scrolling, all the distractions in life, many of those are wasteful. And the other thing I think that's wasteful is, and physicians are horrible at this, because we think we're smart, we think we can do everything. Financials, right? Real estate, whatever. And I see that all the time. So I've had the opposite view, is that I have a bunch of team members, and that's how you and I got connected, because I realized I didn't understand as much about brand and marketing and whatnot. And so I needed help. So you're that for me. I have a financial team that helps me, because I mean, even though I now know what accounts receivable means, it doesn't mean that I know very much about finance, because I'm still an orthopedic surgeon predominantly, and I need help. And so I have these teams. I'm not a lawyer. I need them reviewing contracts for me. So I have a team of people around me to help me do that, which makes me more efficient, because I can focus on what I do well, to your point. And I think that's also helpful, is to put a team around you that can allow you to excel and to take your vision and propel it faster. I think it's good in business and in life personally.
It is, and there's no way to know it all at a high level,
Yeah,
and
it
I think
can't.
no, it's impossible. So the best leaders, they don't know everything, they just hire amazing people and get them all together moving towards the right vision, uh,
Yeah.
and those leaders are able to, you know, like, gather them together, get them informed what the mission, make sure it's the right people, not the best resume. Sometimes the
Yeah,
right
that's right.
people always have, you know, the resume from Harvard or whatever you're looking for, but
Yeah.
they're a great fit for the team, and you can train them the other things. So if you have a great team and they're aligned with your vision, and you can, like, move everybody towards
Yeah,
that.
I think that's right. I think the job of a CEO or a president of a company or whatever is to set the vision, to set the goals and maintain the culture, and to get the team running in the right direction. And then not micro my style is not to micromanage. I micromanage early to get trust, and as soon as I have trust, then my hands are completely off. And that's my leadership style. Everybody's different, depends on probably what you're building. But I do believe that you can't let a chaotic tone be set. That's where leaders have to step in. And it's not to be, arrogant or self-centered, but if you're starting an organization, you have to set the tone. Here's where we're going. This is the vision. It's unwavering. If you want to be part of this vision, hop on. And if you're a good leader, people will hop on. You're right, hopefully. And then you let them excel and get to the highest level of their capability. And then, because you don't have time to do it all, to your point, Dennis. And I've seen micromanagers really get down in the nitty gritty of trying to manage everything. It's exhausting. I mean, it is, and they spend more time micromanaging instead of focusing on the direction and the vision of where they're going. And the people getting micromanaged don't like it either most of the time. But it's,
Never.
I'm not here to I'm not trying to be too judgmental. I'm sure I micromanage more than I should as well, but it's a constant, I think a constant evolution where getting people around you to perform at that high level, but your role is to be unwavering on where the team is going and to set that unequivocally. And that I think that's the sort of stern part of being a leader that's some people may find it uncomfortable, but that's just the way, I think that's just the way it has to be. And in my role, in my current role that we did, I mean, I started the company. It's my money that's at risk as well. So I have to make sure and protect that for myself and my family, and and for all the employees in the organization and their families. I mean, they need a good sustaining job to uh to have a good life and provide for their families, right? So there's a lot of responsibility. So, you have to lean into it and set that tone and that culture. But it's getting that team around you. And I tell you that, Dennis, I couldn't agree more that putting a team of talented people around you is probably the most important thing. It's probably the most important lesson I've learned in my life, which is uh, that I do a couple things really well, but I need other people who bring way more experience and knowledge on the things that I don't know to the table. And I think
Yeah.
that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, and it's funny, early on in my journey into growth and awareness was, 22 years ago. And one of my early mentors, he said to me, and this is where I learned this, what we're talking about right now. He said to me, you want to hire an expert in every area of your life. So you just touched on it about 10 minutes ago. You were like, I'm not an accountant. If I don't,
Yeah,
and I hate doing my accounting and taxes. So if I don't have an
me too.
accountant in my life, I'm going to get in trouble. And if I need to go to court, I need a lawyer. If I get sick, I need a doctor. I can't do my own
Right.
surgery. And if I don't know marketing, I need to call Dennis because Dennis is the best.
That's
And
right.
if there's something I don't understand, we need to ask for help, and asking for help is a sign of strength, and we were taught, most of us early on, it's like, "Figure it out, do it yourself, you shouldn't ask for help," but asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, and I
Agreed.
think tapping into that, uh, as you grow, is really a key factor for success. Because if you I've been a victim of it too, it's like, if I try to do you can only grow so much on your own. If I try to do everything, it doesn't get done at a high level, and then I don't get where I wanna go. Whereas if I hire
Yeah.
somebody or I ask for help, and then I find the answer out sooner and better and more efficient,
Yeah.
that's the
Well,
recipe
right.
for growth.
What I always try and tell our young surgeons is, look, you've been it almost goes back to that original concept of not knowing what accounts receivable was because my nose was in a textbook my whole life, trying to become an orthopedic surgeon, and that's good. My patients expect me to try and be the best orthopedic surgeon I could possibly be. But there's other people out there. For example, let's use your accountant. Let's use your accountant analogy. There are accountants out there spending all day, every day being the best accountant they could be. So how on God's green earth do I think I could know as much about that as those people that are dedicating all day to it? That's that's humility too, right? There's some humility in there to say, I don't know everything. I can't know everything. It's impossible, but they do, right? So that goes right to the point that it's a sign of strength to go realize that you do not uh, you do not know everything. It's impossible for you to, but there's other experts just like you doing something different. Bring them on your team, right?
Yeah, and that's
Surround yourself with them, listen to their knowledge, and soak it up like a sponge if you can. I think
yeah,
that's powerful.
and that's how you grow, and think about it. It's like, there's this, uh, this whole analogy of like drop the rock. Like you're carrying around all these things.
Yeah,
It's impossible, to climb up a 20,000-foot mountain with all this weight. You need to drop it off. And so it's like, if I have an accountant, if I have a doctor, if I have a lawyer, if I have a business help, if I have a great partner in my life, if I have all these things, now I'm free to do these things.
That's
right?
right.
And it's like, if I'm
Totally.
trying to do all these things, there's no room in my life to go over here. And so if I turn it over, now we can expand. I have this, and now I have this too. And so it's a
Yep.
new way of thinking about growth. And it's in every area of your life, not just business, in
Agreed.
every area of life.
Agreed. And I think I admire the really exceptional leaders who can do that. That's, you see they're usually surrounded by a lot of really also talented people, right? That's
Yeah.
usually what you
And
see,
why
which
wouldn't you
is
wanna be? That's the
absolutely,
thing. And I think,
absolutely.
like, especially, nowadays where everything is like, you can have AI agents doing a lot of things too, which is really helpful, and you should probably, because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
technology. You wanna use what's available to make your life more efficient, if it's, people or
Oh,
technology,
I
right?
think that's exactly right. I think it's exactly right. I think AI will make us more efficient as well in its right place, right? To your point, it's not gonna replace the human authenticity, but it should replace those tasks and those processes that consume humans and not for the benefit of the overall organization, right? So for in our profession, a great thing is prior authorization to get surgical procedures, right? So right now the healthcare companies are developing AI to it's just because their job usually is to not approve it best they can or to try and
Right.
scrutinize that. And then the physicians and their practices are trying to get the authorizations to do the procedures for the patient on the behalf of the patient. Now, ironically, the consumer, the patient, the actual consumer is sitting off to the side watching all this. It's like, I mean, can you imagine that's how messed up healthcare is? You imagine go to McDonald's or pick your restaurant and you want to order a hamburger and everybody else has to fight about whether you get your hamburger or not? That right? Welcome to healthcare. I mean, welcome to healthcare in the
That's
United
such an
States in
amazing
2026,
analogy.
right? It's
Yeah.
true. Like what? Right?
It's a disaster.
You're like starving. I'm like, I'm hungry. Can you guys stop fighting? Give me a hamburger. I'm willing to, it's like crazy. But anyway, that's what our healthcare is. But AI to do that, well, because it is a massive, massive time suck and resource consumption for our business. And as a small business like we are, if we can automate that, that's where AI will help us. And there's people doing that right now, developing these the AI programs that are able to do that. But the insurance companies are developing them too. So it'll be AI versus AI. It'll be fun to watch apparently. But
Yeah,
but
there's a
I
lot of
think
AI versus AI going on right now. And
uh,
so that's
that's
where,
right.
yeah, and so let's go back to that for a second, which we kinda have to wrap it up soon. We're gonna have to do this
Yep.
again, but
Yep.
which I think it was really great. What a great
I enjoyed it,
um,
Dennis. You're a great podcast interviewer.
oh, thank you. But well, I've done, like, hundreds of them, but I also enjoy it doing it too. But, what we were just talking about is this AI talking to AI, and I think that, uh, you're right, like, it's going to make life so much more efficient, but let's go back to, we need to do that and still keep the humanness in it. That's
Correct.
that is, and I think in just about everything, it's like, look, you have to look at your business model, because everybody's talking about AI this, AI that, automation, and yeah, whenever possible. But, if your business model is selling, like, cups, you don't need much human interaction. It's like, "This is a
That's
cup.
right.
This is
That's
what it
right.
looks like. It holds 12 ounces. My cup." And you can automate that all day long on
Yep.
Amazon, and that's fine. And if that's your business model, do that. But if you're dealing with human beings or something that requires a high touch, we need to keep the humanness in it. So that's gonna be the next big challenge. It's not automation of everything. It's, how can I make this more efficient and still participate and let the client, the customer, the patient know that I'm here with them. That's where I think is gonna be the next $1 billion idea.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be, and healthcare will be a prime example of that because people want connectivity. I mean, it's, it's weird. I don't, and it's going to sound, sounds a little fluffy here, but I do think humans want to be healed and cared for by humans. And I know
Absolutely.
and I don't, and I'm pretty unapologetic about that. I don't think now if a machine can heal them in a way that they don't want to deal with it. And maybe I'm not saying all humans because everyone's different. Some may prefer the more distant healing by AI or whatever, but they want to be, especially when you look at what we do as surgeons. That's such a vulnerable thing to go to sleep as a patient. Think about it. You go to sleep and you're the most vulnerable you can be because someone else is entering your body to try and heal you, and you're totally asleep, with no ability to protect yourself. And I never try and take that vulnerability for granted. And I don't think I want AI. In all fairness, I think I want a human to be responsible for that,
Yeah.
not an AI driven, whatever you call them, program, organism, whatever you want to call it. Right? I think I want a human doing that. That'd be my preference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great place to end it. Let's wrap it up here, and then we're gonna obviously have to do this again probably next week or soon, and when time permits. But any closing arguments? I like to say, like, sometimes when I'm talking to people, at the end, they're in a business position or some sort of something where they're like they want a certain outcome, like contact me if you need this or whatever. But for our conversation, for you, I think it's more about awareness and introduction to Michael Meneghini. Um, but what do you want people to know about you, who you are, how to contact you if they need anything or
Oh, no, that's very nice of you. I mean, look, you're helping me a ton, right? LinkedIn and Substack are the places where that's the only thing I really am involved with, just because professional focus is key. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk. And having been in this career for 25 years, it's great to be able to share some perspective. If it can help other people, if it can help patients or help other physicians that are trying to find their path and not make as many mistakes as I did, I think that's one of the reasons I like sharing and teaching, just like today going to that course. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell the story and try and help the next generation of surgeon entrepreneurs and engineers not make some of the mistakes that I did. So appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah, and that's what it's all about. So thank you so much. I appreciate it
Yep.
and your wisdom and expertise. And I look forward to next time. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And we will see you soon. Have a beautiful day today.
Same to you, Dennis. Thank you.
Adios. Bye.